Hey guys, and welcome back to another OnShape tutorial. This one will follow on from the water bottle tutorial. And in this one, we're going to break it up into two parts. And our end goal is going to be to create a door hinge and animate it to show how it would actually function in real life. As I said, we'll split this video up into two parts. The first part will be mainly making the parts of the hinge in a part studio. And the second part will be where we assemble the hinge and then animate it to function as it would in the real world. So because we're creating multiple parts and components that need to fit together and then assembling them, this time we're going to create a new document. So at the top of your OnShape home window, click the Create button and then start a new document and call it Door Hinge. Okay, when OnShape opens up our workspace, we're going to start, as we do always, by selecting a plane. In this case, I'm going to left-click the front plane, press N to normalize, and then start a new sketch by selecting Sketch in the top left corner. I'm going to start by drawing a rectangle, which you should be pretty familiar with by now. So click on the origin point and then drag your rectangle out to the right and left click again. Now the width of our rectangle is going to be 20 millimeters and the height of our rectangle is going to be 1.5 millimeters. So type those in and press enter. Then zoom in so you can see your rectangle a bit better. Alright, the next thing we want to do is draw a circle. Now we need to make sure we draw our circle out in space. Don't draw your circle if you have a yellow line like this, because the yellow dotted line means the circle will be constrained. So over here in empty space, I'm going to draw my circle and I'm going to type 3.5 because I want it to be 3.5 millimeters in diameter. Now I need to draw another circle that is concentric to this one, and I could use the circle tool, but for the sake of learning a new tool, let's use the offset tool. So in the ribbon there's a tool called the offset tool. You're going to select that, click your circle and then press enter, and then type in 1.5 millimeters and press enter. So what the offset tool does is basically copies a path and offsets it by a set distance. Alright, now we're going to use the dimension tool. So click the dimension tool in your ribbon or press D on your keyboard, then select the center of your circle, and the origin point. And we're going to set a distance from the origin point. Sorry, I'm just going to try that again. So center of my circle and the origin point. I'm going to drag my dimension up, and we're going to set this dimension to 3.25 millimeters. Then we're going to do one from the center of your circle again to the origin point, except out to the side, and we're going to set that one to 1.5 millimeters and press enter. Alright, the last thing we need to do is zoom in a little bit and then select the line tool in the top left corner, and you're going to draw a line from the origin point to your circle, but don't click immediately. What you want to do is put your mouse on the edge of the larger circle and drag it around until you see the T symbol that I've got plus a tangent symbol, which was a circle with a line next to it. So see here I've got like a T, and then all of a sudden I've got the T plus a circle and a line. That's where I'm going to click, because that means that that line is tangent to the circle. The last thing you can do is just press escape, and that will unselect the line tool, and then click the tick to let the program know you're finished with that sketch. Alright, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to extrude our shape that we've just drawn. So click the extrude tool. You're going to select the original rectangle you drew. You're going to select the outside circle, and you're going to select this little region that we just created here. We're going to extrude that 80 millimeters, and then you're going to click the tick to let it know that you're done. Now if I rotate out into 3D view now, you can see that I've pretty well created the body of my hinge. We just need to make a few modifications for holes for screws and to cut some pieces out of here so that we can rotate it around and join it to itself. So what we're going to do is first we're going to cut the pieces out of the spine of the hinge so that we can join it to itself. And we're going to do that by creating a sketch on the back of the hinge. So when I refer to the back of the hinge, I'm referring to this side that's got two ridges that are visible. The front of the hinge is this side that only has one ridge visible. So on a door, this is where the part of the hinge you would see when you opened the door, and this is the part that would be against, the door or the door jamb, and you wouldn't be able to see it. So we're going to start a new sketch on the back of our hinge. Press N to normalize your view. The first thing I'm going to do is draw a rectangle up in space. So my rectangle is going to be 20 millimeters across, and it's going to be 7 millimeters tall. Okay, and then I'm going to use the dimension tool to locate it. So I'm going to start by left clicking the left side of my rectangle and the left side of my hinge and dragging the dimension up, and we're going to change that to 0. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select the top, and this is important that you get the top of your rectangle and then the second ridge line, not the first one, the second one. Drag it out to the side, and you're going to change that to 6.5 and press enter. Now we're going to repeat that by drawing another rectangle in space. Again, it's going to be 20 millimeters across and 7 millimeters tall. This time we're going to use the dimension tool again. So from the ribbon, click the dimension tool or press D on your keyboard. The left edge of your rectangle to the left edge of the hinge and drag that down. We're going to make it 40 millimeters from the edge. And then again, making sure you select the top line of your rectangle and the second ridge, drag your dimension out to the side, and that's going to be 6.5 millimeters. Now, if your sketch looks like this, where your two rectangles are evenly spaced apart and the spaces in between them are the same size, click the tick to let it know that you're finished with that sketch. And then I'm going to rotate around to a 3D view again by holding the right click and moving my cursor. Alright, now that we've finished that sketch, we're going to cut some pieces out of the spine of this hinge. And we're going to do that by clicking the extrude tool. And then rather than clicking on the drawing to select our rectangles, we're just going to select the whole sketch by clicking it over here in the feature tree. So click sketch 2. We're wanting to cut material, not add. So we need to make sure we select remove in the extrude dialog box. We're going to select through all. And because this is only cutting in one direction at the moment, and we need it to cut in both directions because our sketch is kind of in the middle of the spine, if you look at that, we need to tick the box here that says symmetric, and that will cut in both directions. Then you can click the tick. Alright, the last thing we need to do before we've finished the leaf of our hinge is we're going to add some holes for the screws. So what you're going to want to do is select the front face of your hinge. So remember, the front face is the one with only one ridge line. Press N to normalize it and then start a new sketch. Alright, so we're going to get the circle tool and we're just going to draw a circle on the front face, and we're going to make that 5 millimeters in diameter. Then we're going to use the dimension tool, so click the dimension tool or press D on your keyboard. From the left edge, we're going to click the center of our circle and then the left edge of our hinge, drag a dimension down, and from this edge we're going to make it 16 millimeters, so type 16 and press enter. Then from the outside edge, we're going to click the center of our circle and then the bottom edge, drag that out, and we're going to go in 6 millimeters from that edge. And then we're going to repeat this process. So we're going to get another circle, we're going to draw it down here, click, we're going to create that, change the dimension of that to 5 millimeters. Select the dimension tool and dimension from this right edge 32 millimeters. And then we're going to click the center and dimension from this bottom edge 6 millimeters. Okay, we've got 2 more holes to draw, so get your circle tool again, draw another circle up here, dimension it to be 5, so type 5 and then enter. Get your dimension tool by clicking D on the keyboard, click the center of your circle, click the left edge of the hinge, drag it down and change that to be 32. Click the center of your circle and then click this top edge here and drag it out to the side, and that's going to be 6 millimeters. And we're going to do one more down here. So we're going to get the circle tool, draw a circle, change it to 5, enter, then get the dimension tool, dimension it so that it's 16 millimeters from this edge, and then 6 millimeters from that top edge. And if your sketch looks something like that, then you can click tick to let the program know that you've finished sketching. Alright, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to click the extrude tool and we're going to select those 4 circles that we just drew. We're going to click remove because we want to cut holes in our hinge, and we're going to change it from blind to through all. Then you're going to select the tick. I'm just going to move around in 3D space to show that those holes have gone all the way through. Okay, and the last thing that we're going to do is we're going to add a countersink to those holes so that when a screw is screwed into it, it would sit flush. And we do that by using the chamfer tool up here. So you select the chamfer tool, you click the top edge of each of those holes. Okay. And we're going to do a 1 mil chamfer, so make sure here that it says 1 millimeter in your dialog box. If it doesn't, change it to that, then click the tick. And that's our hinge leaf done. Alright, the next thing we need to do is we've got to create a pin to hold the hinge together. And the way we're going to do that is by rotating the hinge so we can look at the end of it, like so. I'm going to select this end face, press N on my keyboard to normalize it, and then I'm going to select new sketch. Next thing I'm going to do is select the circle tool, and I'm going to go to the center of this circle, and you'll see when I get to the center I get a little square and the circle is highlighted to show that I'm in the center. I'm going to click there and drag my circle out a little way, not all the way out to here because it will constrain it to that size. So then I'll click and I'm going to make this the pin 3 millimeters. Once you've done that, you can click to finish your sketch. I'm going to rotate back into a 3-dimensional view by holding the right click and rotating. Next thing I'm going to do is select the extrude tool, and I'm going to select the circle that we just drew, and I'm going to want to extrude it 80 millimeters. So I'll click 80. At the moment it's going in the wrong direction. I want it to extrude down this direction through the hinge. So I just need to click the arrow in my dialog box or this arrow here, and that will change the direction of the extrusion. The last thing I'm going to do is click tick to let it know that I'm finished extruding. Alright, to finish the pin and make sure that it won't fall out of the hinge, we need to create a dome on each end of the hinge. And the way we're going to do that is rotate to this end of the pin, zoom in and select the end face, press N to normalize it, and then start a new sketch. We're going to do something similar to what we just did, where we select the circle tool and then move our mouse until it highlights the center of that circular face. Left click and drag the circle out. Type in the dimension 6.5 and then click enter. Now the next thing I need to do is draw a circle that goes straight down the center of my circle. So draw a line, sorry. So what I need to do is select the line tool in the ribbon at the top. Go to the center point of my circle and start to move the cursor up without clicking. So I get this yellow dotted line, and make sure I get the yellow dotted line until I get all the way to the top of my circle. Then I'm going to left click and go all the way down again, making sure I have the dotted line to the bottom of that circle. Once you've done that, you can press escape to tell the program you don't want to draw any more lines, and then click the tick to let it know you're finished sketching. And I'm going to rotate back into 3D space again. Alright, what we're going to do to create this dome is use the revolve tool, which is one of the tools that we use to create our coffee cup. So in our 3D menu at the top, we're going to select revolve. For the faces and sketch regions to revolve, we're going to select this outside circle and then this inside circle. On either side, it doesn't matter. And then you're going to click revolve axis and click the line that you drew through the center. Now, when we did our coffee cup, we did a full revolve, and this time we only want to do a half revolve. We don't want to create a sphere like this, we want to create half a sphere or a hemisphere. So to do that, we have to click the drop-down box where it says full and change to one direction. And then in the dialog box, type 180, okay? And at the moment, you can see that my hemisphere is going in the wrong direction. So to change that, I'm just going to click opposite direction and that will flip it over onto the top. Once it looks like that, you can click the tick to let the program know that you're finished revolving. All right, the last thing we need to do is create a dome on this end of our pin. Now we could do the same thing again, draw a circle, split a line down the center of it and revolve, or we can just mirror this dome to the other end. Before we do that though, we're going to want to rename our parts down here in the parts window, and this will become more important in a second. So part 1, I'm going to right click on it and rename it, and we're going to call that the hinge leaf. And then press enter. Part 2, I'm going to right click, select rename, and we're going to rename that to hinge pin. And then click enter. Alright, so to mirror this dome to the other end, what I need to do is go to my ribbon at the top here and select mirror. Okay, and then it's going to ask me what I want to mirror. So I'm going to select the dome or this pin. Okay, and it's going to say I've selected the hinge pin. The next thing I'm going to do is select the mirror plane, so the plane that I want to mirror across, which is going to be this face on our hinge. So I'm going to select that face. The last thing I'm going to do is I don't want to create a new pin because we already have a pin. What we want to do is just add this dome to the other side. So instead of new, I'm going to make sure I click add here in the mirror dialog box. The last thing I need to do is where it says merge scope, I have to select the parts that I'm wanting to join that dome to. So I'm going to click merge scope, and then over here in our parts menu, I'm going to make sure I select hinge pin. And just check to make sure you've got hinge pin in the dialog box here. Once you've done that, you can click the tick to say that you're finished, and we've created all the parts that we need now to assemble our hinge and then animate it. The last thing I'm going to have you do before we finish this tutorial is just to change the color of the parts. So I'm going to change mine to look like a brass hinge, but I would encourage you to change yours to a different color so that when you take a screenshot, it's obvious that you've created your own hinge. So remember, we change the color of our hinge or our parts by right clicking on them in the parts menu, clicking edit appearance, and then selecting our color. So I'm going to go for a brass kind of look. So I'm going to select this yellowy color, maybe that one. We'll go with that one, and then I'll click the tick. And then for the pin, I'm going to right click, go edit appearance, and I'm going to change it to a slightly different color, maybe the orange. Yep, that will do. And that's it. So once you've done that, take a screenshot of your completed hinge, and you can post that under this post in Google Classroom to show me that you've done. So we've created all the parts that we need now to assemble our hinge and then animate it. So that's it for this part of the door hinge tutorial.